Hey everyone, how's it going? Today we're going to be looking at a perfume which is from a super hyped line, or it's often talked about line of perfumes, but we're going to be looking at one perfume in particular which is kind of not really talked about in the whole lineup. No one really mentions it. So today we've got Replica by Maison Margiela, Promenade in the Gardens. Now, Promenade in the Gardens, I say, the Replica line itself, a lot of people talk about it. In general, they mostly talk about Jazz Club and By the Fireplace, or By the Fireside, whichever one it is, I forget. They're kind of pretty hyped in general. But yeah, Promenade in the Gardens, I think it's a decent perfume and it's never talked about. So I figured, hey, why not talk about it? The perfumer behind Promenade in the Gardens is Carlos Benaim, and his kind of notable kind of works, I suppose he's worked with Frederic Malle, Armani. He did Armani Code for Women, I think, and he also did Calvin Klein Eternity for Men in 1989, which is kind of massive for me, because it was probably the first perfume I ever got. And it was the first perfume that kind of got me into scents back when I was kind of a wee teenager in the mid-90s. Everyone else was wearing CK1 and I was like, nah, screw that. And I would wear CK Eternity. So pretty much, that whole kind of part of my growing up, I was wearing CK Eternity. So yeah, the perfume behind this kind of surprised me. I didn't actually know, and I got this, I just picked it up. But yeah, I was quite pleased to find out that it was him. As with all the Replica perfumes, if you don't know them, they're like conceptual. They take an idea and they supposedly try and capture that idea in a scent. So you have Jazz Club is supposed to represent the smell of a New York jazz club from a very specific kind of fictional time that they've probably just plucked out their arse. And then you've got By the Fireside or Fireplace, I should probably look that up, and it's supposed to represent fireplace, and it is a pretty good representation of that actually, and such and such and so on basically. And this one, Promenade in the Gardens, is a provenance and period is Oxfordshire 1986, and it's a shaded and flowered pass, and it says it's a female fragrance. Well, that's interesting because I think this is pretty unisex, and if anything, it's pretty leans feminine in the sort of initial spray, and then it kind of leans fairly unisex, if not, I don't know if I'd say masculine, but it's pretty butch in the dry down. So yeah, I thought it's kind of strange that they kind of labelled it as a female fragrance, but we'll come on to that anyway. So what are the notes in Promenade in the Gardens? They are, in the top, I'm going to save one of them because it's pretty obvious, but you got freesia, coriander, in the middle you got Turkish rose, peony, jasmine sambac, and in the bottom you've got patchouli, Australian sandalwood and vetiver. It's not listed, but there's definitely some white musk in this. And one of the other notes that are in the top are green notes, and for me, that is more or less what this whole perfume is based around. It's kind of a green colour, if you can see that, and that kind of gives it away. I mean, the colour of this perfume is pretty much the smell of the perfume, more or less. But this is possibly one of the easier reviews I'm ever going to do. So yeah, what does it smell like? I'm going to give it a spray, but I know it quite well, but dramatic effect. So right off the top, you get a massive blast of alcohol. You get some florals. The florals are down in the, it's kind of interesting, Promenade in the Gardens, and then you look at the note list with freesia, Turkish rose, peony, jasmine sambac, you think that's floral, right? And it is floral, but they're kind of down in the mix. And what's more interesting, and to me, is that right up in the mix you've got these kind of sweet florals that kind of sit back down a little bit, but right up top you've got loads of green notes. It's really, really green. It smells like a mix of like flower stems and leaves and grass, and that's kind of the main kind of accord for me, is that kind of greenery. I mean, if you look at the note list, it's basically a chypre, but if you kind of want to go with their kind of, you know, replica conceptual idea, supposedly this, you know, promenade in the gardens and shaded and flowered paths, for me, this is very much like the smell, and in fact I would say it's damn near identical of the kind of smell you get when you're in either a public park, or if you've got people in your neighbourhood, or you do yourself a lot of gardening, and when the sun's going down in those spring and summer months and the gardens get watered, because obviously you can't water them when the sun's up because it'll just fry all the flowers, right? So they wait for the sun to come down a little bit. When the sun's low, like in the sky, sort of like 8 p.m, something like that, they'll kind of water the garden, and that is what this smells like massively. You get this kind of quite aquatic, wet, damp, green smell, along with a kind of backseat florals, and that's how the florals are taking the back seat, I think, because when you water the green, you know, in real life, when you water the greenery, that kind of picks up its own smell, and it's almost as pungent, if not more so, than the flowers, and they've kind of captured that really well in this by kind of sitting those florals back behind the green notes. And that's also what makes this, in my opinion, entirely unisex, because it's obviously heavily floral, but it's not super floral, you know. It's got a lot of green notes, a lot of freshness. It smells like you know, something that unisex kind of freshy, really. But underneath that, you've also got a little bit of sandalwood, which, you know, if I'm being honest, it's not stabbing out at me. It's not a really obvious note in this. It's very subtle. It's more like just a soft kind of creamy woods, but it's real subtle. You've got green notes on the top, like right in your face, then you've got this kind of floral that's just behind that, and then again, one step down from there, you've got a kind of very kind of soft, sort of creamy sandalwood, and a bit of patchouli. I'd say the patchouli is definitely there. I mean, I'm quite familiar with this. I'm smelling this strip, but I know more or less exactly what it smells like. But you have like a very kind of soft patchouli just underneath that, and it's a very clean patchouli, clean, fresh. There's not a lot of dirt in this. It's all very fresh and very clean. There's also like a very slight soapiness to it, but that sort of comes out a little bit later. Give it about half an hour and you get a very slight soapiness, but it's like a very clean, soapy, gently floral, big on the greens. And that's kind of it. It's pretty linear after that. It says there's vetiver in this. My arse is there vetiver in this. I mean, you can smell vetiver much later on, like in the very sort of dying embers of the dry down. If you put your nose right up to your skin, you get a kind of soft vetiver that mixes with the sandalwood at that point, and this musk as well. So the white musk isn't listed in the notes, but it's definitely there, but it's very soft, and it'll come out with this vetiver. And the vetiver is not spicy at all, it's not earthy, it's not dirty, it's very almost fruity, like a kind of gently sweet fruity vetiver, but it's so in the dry down, and the only way you can, or for me the only way I can smell it is if I've got it on my wrist, I'm genuinely like kind of sniffing my wrist. It's the only time I pick up that vetiver. Otherwise, it's a pretty straightforward fragrance, but it's a very nice fragrance. It's clean, it's fresh. It's not really for this time of year. I'm making this in the middle of the autumn, totally the wrong time of year for it. It's definitely a spring fragrance, spring, summer, perfect. Spring, absolutely nailed on, perfect. What else I think it's really good for, like, if you're a woman watching this, I think this is and you're looking for a nice, soft, gentle floral that's easy to pick up and wear and isn't going to offend. It's not overly challenging, but you know what it does well, then I think this is perfect for you. You like, go for it. You should definitely sort of grab a sample of it, or you know, test it. I think you'll enjoy it. For guys, I think it's really good for guys who want to maybe dip their toe into the idea of gender bending and wearing some kind of gentle florals, because you've got the florals there that are definitely kind of lean feminine, but where all the green notes are on top, that kind of pushes them to the back seat ever so slightly, and enough to be able to wear this if you're perhaps a little bit self-conscious. You know, if you're kind of thinking like that you would like to try a floral, but you're a little bit self-conscious that you don't want people to sort of smell you and think that you're going to smell like a girl, or whatever, something ridiculous they might think. You know, if you're worried about that, then I think this is a really good kind of entry point to try and sort of perfumes marketed towards women that are kind of generally floral, but rocking them anyway, because why the hell not? And I think this is a really good kind of starting point, because the florals are just subtle enough to kind of give it that like kind of masculine kind of edge with the greenery and the sandalwood and the kind of patchouli. Like, you're kind of all right, you know, you're kind of, if you're not too confident, 90% of this perfume, or maybe not that much, say 70% of this perfume is kind of shared as a kind of unisex fragrance anyway. It's only really the florals that kind of lean it feminine, and they're not florals in that kind of big, waxy, strong floral, thick kind of flower way. They're florals that, I say, they sit behind a kind of big green, kind of slightly aquatic vibe. So you're kind of, you know, it's not quite like you're going straight into a chypre, like, you know, a kind of feminine chypre. If you're a guy, like, you're kind of just dipping your toe in that idea. So, you know, I think, you know, it's good for either sexes, and it's a really nice fragrance. I say, off the top, about now you're getting all the greenery and the florals. It's all very nice. And then, you know, later on in the dry down, you're going to get this just really soft sandalwood it's not the best sandalwood I've ever smelt, if I'm being honest, but it's nice, it's soft, it's quite it's not very strong of a wood. It's not like a strong woodsy smell. It's more just a kind of suggestion of a sandalwood. The patchouli is kind of the main kind of base note that's going to stick out and hang around, and that's quite a sweet, fresh patchouli. And then, yeah, you've got this kind of vetiver, which is basically non-existent, but it's quite fruity and a little bit sweet. And that's kind of it really for Promenade in the Garden. Say it's a dead easy one to review. It's easy to recommend. I mean, if you like the Replica line, you kind of know what you're getting into. It's that if you're a woman looking for a conceptual kind of chypre along the ideas of a kind of freshly watered garden in the spring or summer, I think you'll love it. And you know, it's I think if you're looking for a fragrance that's not overly challenging, you can just throw it on without thinking about it too much. It's going to be safe in pretty much every situation, then go for it. And I think if you're a guy and you're looking for something like just to kind of test the waters of wearing like a gentle floral, like, yeah, go for it. I think it's a really good one to kind of do that for you. In terms of sort of seasonal and stuff, I actually wore this for the purpose of this review, but it really didn't work in this kind of autumn vibe. It was really wrong. It just felt wrong. It's definitely a spring fragrance more than anything. I wouldn't want to say it's like just the one season. I think you could wear it in the summer as well, but definitely in the spring, really good, and it's really worth a crack. say it's sort of weird how people don't talk about it. I suppose you got like, you know, Jazz Club and By the Fire, which is very sort of the darlings of the Replica, I guess, of the Replica line. So yeah, I guess people don't talk about this one so much, but you know, I wanted to do like a quick video on it because I think it's not amazing, but it's worth talking about. And when I say it's not amazing, I'm comparing that to some of the best of the best, you know, or the best that I've smelled. So, you know, in terms of, you know, if you compare it to a lot of other florals for the same sort of price in that kind of upper echelon of designers, I think it's really good. I think it's well up there. Say, if you're looking for a cheaper, I would really consider checking it out, especially because it's not challenging, but it has got that little kind of conceptual edge of it being a kind of watered garden, you know, or to me it feels like a watered garden, but the idea that it's a kind of shaded and flowered paths or whatever, I kind of, as much as I kind of want to hate the Replica line for being a bit pretentious that way, they do get it right, and you smell it and it does remind you of those things that they're trying to remind you of, and they do kind of tend to nail it more often than not. And in this case, I say, I think they did. I think it really does smell like a kind of soft floral garden. I think they've done a really good job. So yeah, Replica, Promenade in the Gardens, Maison Margiela, is worth checking out. If you can get it cheap, even more worth checking out. And you can tend to get it cheap because it's just not one of the darlings, I guess. So yeah, have a crack. Thanks for watching. Cheers.